The first story I'm going to read from is called At the Edge of the World. The stories range across mainly South Korea, a little bit in North Korea, and in the United States. This one is about a family of North Korean defectors who do make it to the US, but from the son's point of view. At the Edge of the World. His name was Myung-suk Lee at home and Mark Lee at school. He was 9 years old and he knew everything. He knew that in Peru, one bush housed more ant species than all of the United Kingdom, and that rainforests above 3,000 feet were called cloud forests. The dogs had nose prints, the way humans had fingerprints, that a violin contained more than 70 pieces of wood, and that 99% of what people bought they didn't use after 6 months. He knew that a 6th grade teacher, Mrs. Whitney, tried to make him skip another grade because he corrected her grammar mistakes out loud and napped during sharing time, and that his parents were melancholy when they ordered him pizza for dinner instead of making rice, or spoke quietly about their hometowns and family that might be dead or alive. They would never know. Or about America passing the North Korean Human Rights Act in 2004, but so far had only let 200 of their people, only 200, including their family, into the country. He knew that Roberto the bully was right, that Mark's father couldn't really love him because he wasn't his real father. He knew you were supposed to have friends, but he didn't care. He knew that President Lincoln was so depressed he was afraid of carrying a penknife in case he might kill himself, and that William Taft was the world's heaviest president ever. Today was May 17, 2009. He knew everything. For example, no matter how normal his parents pretended they were, he knew they were different. Sure, they worked at normal jobs. His mother as a waitress in a kalbi restaurant, and his stepfather exterminating bugs and managing the duplex they lived in. His mother read him Korean folk tales, and his father taught him algebra, his oversized dandelion head wagging on the short stalk of his body, as though Mark spotted shortcuts that would save a calculation or two, but he feigned confusion so his father could feel helpful. Then suddenly, the State Department would call, or his father would notice someone following their used Kia. Last week, an official in charge of the 4, now 3, North Koreans in Los Angeles County, he, his mother, his father, and a man who had killed himself last year, visited. He congratulated them on how quickly they had adapted, calling them model refugee cases. His father's eyebrows nodded together, but he smiled and said, "I've never considered myself some case," then changed the subject. Once, his father had believed in the North Korean leader, Kim Jong-il, the way the Korean community around them believed in God. "Is he better than his dad, Kim Il-sung?" Mark asked that night at the dinner table. "He's a very bad man," his father said, as quietly as his shuffle, his signature on paper, Chechalbra, and the neutral colors he wore that made him resemble an animal seeking camouflage. "How bad?" Mark said now, and leaned into the marinated beef, insulting his vegetarian eyes. "Any bloody thumbs?" His father's Adam's apple danced. He said there was a school lesson they taught us that went 1 + 1 = 2 dead Americans. His mother made a nervous, tickling motion with her hand on her throat. Nothing scared her but the past. She said, "Myung-suk's only 9. Don't pollute him." His father said, "Then who's ever going to know?" She said decisively, "Your problem is you live in the past." "I'm happy, if that's what you want," his father said. "Of course I'm happy all the time." On May 22nd, the most important day of the year since it was the day Mark was born, new renters to their duplex knocked on their door. A woman bowed, pausing as she dipped down ballerina style, then rose. Her dress reminded him of a cloud. Though everything looked wrong about her, the sharp nose against the pillowy softness of her face, her snowy head of hair and wispy eyebrows, she carried herself with a grace more swan than woman. Hiding behind her were puzzle fragments of a girl his age. Mark looked for a limp, a missing finger, a wig. That was their neighborhood. Everyone was missing something. "Come in," his mother boomed, her voice fiercely friendly, squeezing her bountiful three-tiered waterfall of a stomach as she greeted them. When she wasn't wearing makeup or a dress, people thought she was a man. The woman dropped the basket of rice cakes in her hand, but his father caught it, then winked at Mark. "I'm pleased to meet you for the first time," the woman said, her lips barely moving as she spoke. "We've come for the keys." "Oh, don't run away. Have some cake," his mother said, and tugged the woman into the house by the arm. "Wouldn't your granddaughter like some cake? It's our son's birthday." His mother looked displeased at being contradicted. She expected obedience. His father tugged nervously at his belt. Mark spotted a $20 bill protruding out of his father's sock. His father kept money in the strangest places. Behind the clownish twists of his father's face, there was a carefulness as he studied them, as he studied all strangers like a textbook. He said, "Please save us. You'll be doing our health a favor if you help us with our son's cake meant for 12 people. The woman regarded his father with suspicion. Mark was used to this. His father looked far too young to be his father. His mother was the same. She had been 16 in China when a farmer she had been sold to made her a baby, which was Mark. Once she had said, "Thank the Lord, the man hasn't left a trace in my son." But age was age, and cake was cake. His new purple cape flared behind him as he ran backward, so these strangers wouldn't take more than their proper share of the cake that he'd especially requested, with the frosted letters, "Say no to plastic." The girl stepped out from behind her mother's back, a finger to her mouth, her eyes on his cake. Mark stopped breathing. She looked like a cartoon character, copper pennies for eyes, two pigtails as aerodynamic as rockets, a fancy dress resembling lemon meringue that covered 9/10 of her, making the friendly sun her nemesis. He stared at her, a girl so serious she seemed afraid to smile, while his mother brought out plates and a stinky tea that was supposed to be good for your health. The girl stared back. They found a place to sit despite his mother's habit of hoarding chairs, sofas, and old magazines that neighbors threw out. Once, she had become enraged after finding half a rotting peach in the refrigerator. "Even animals don't waste," she'd said. The old people began talking in careful, fake-friendly voices. "Your daughter's so tall. Arrived from Korea a week ago. This is a good country," his mother said, though after they had arrived from the Bangkok detention center 4 years ago, she never left the Los Angeles Koreatown, so never really needed to speak English, especially with Mark as translator, interpreter, and the youngest personal secretary in history. His mother fired away with questions. She liked to know what was what. Husband, hometown, hobbies, work. "I'm a shaman, widowed," the woman said. Each syllable separated, her head tipping higher with each word. "You should know this about me." "Jesus saved us," his mother said emphatically. "I don't do shamanism." His father, embarrassed, poured more stinky tea. He said, "Everyone's welcome here." The woman sat, hands folded impassively together, her eyes watching and waiting. Mark asked, "What does a shaman do?" He only remembered muddy photographs of ceremonial food at an altar and an old woman moving a paper boat over a white strip of cloth. His mother said, "Oh, keep quiet." His father said, "He's just curious." The girl had gone very still. Like her mother, she was watching the old people. "What's your name?" Mark asked her, then saw that, like her mother, she didn't understand English, so he switched to Korean. "I'm Chun-hee," she said. The words came out crisp but slow, as if she weren't used to talking. "And little boy," the girl's mother turned to him with her cheerless smile. "What's that around your neck?" "I'm not little." Mark pushed up the glasses he had begged his mother to buy, so he would look more intellectual. "I'm average height for my age, which today is now 10, so I'm much too old to be a boy. This is a stethoscope." "He's going to be a doctor," his mother said. "I'm going to be a heart surgeon and buy Omma and Appa a house in Beverly Hills." "It's good to have a son," his father said, and cut him the best slice of cake crowned by 2 plastic bags made of sooty icing. They began talking more quietly, their bodies turned away from Mark. "You're weird," Chani said, faster this time. He studied his feet. "Depends on your definition of weird." He knew small talk was important to carrying a conversation, so he said, "You know the 29th U.S. President, Woodrow Wilson? He used to carry a stomach pump with him everywhere he went. His digestion was that bad." She shot back with, "Can you wiggle your ears?" She made her white lobes flutter like pale butterflies. Her mother, his father, all of them, were lost to the importance of the moment when Chinese ears went pink as they tilted his way. She said shyly, "If I'm your friend, will you check me with your that thing around your neck?" So that's the first scene of the story, an earlier story, actually later in the book, an earlier story about their lives, actually follows them from North Korea to China. So it's a strange, kind of a dark story, I suppose you can call it, and in some ways a rather surreal story. I thought about reading that one, and then I didn't really want to depress everybody today, so I stayed away from that. But be warned, there is a fair bit of violence and strangeness in this book. It's one of the things I'm actually quite obsessed with, though I'm not